No problem. So, good evening, gents. My name's Larry Alaka.
Hang on, mate. Hang on. You're a bit keen here. Let's do an intro.
Oh.
Let's
take over the show. You lost the show, Sean.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's FYB Rugby Round Table. It's our first panel discussion for a couple of weeks. We took a couple of weeks off and we replaced ourselves with, and I hope you enjoyed it, a chat with WWE's John Bradshaw Layfield. And then last week we did a little chat with Bruce Aitchison. So if you haven't watched them or listened to them, go and check them out. But welcome back. As I said, we took a couple of weeks off. So this is our first live panel for a couple of weeks. And I'd like to introduce you to our panel. So we've got Jordan Young from Trinity Guild RFC. We've got Ewan Leadbetter from Barton RFC. And Laurie Alaka from my club and my captain, Racal Decca RFC. How are we, gentlemen?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Very
Good
good.
afternoon.
Very good.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming on tonight. Hopefully it's going to be another interesting chat about all things grassroots rugby. As always, if you want to get involved in the discussions, of course you can enter some questions, enter some points into the chat section, and we'll try and get through them as much as we can in sort of the next half an hour, 40 minutes or so. So as always, we sort of start the roundtable by asking each member of the roundtable to talk about their club and how they fared during lockdown. So Jordan, how did you get on with Trinity Guild?
Yeah, so lockdown's a bit strange for me. Kind of stepped down from a coaching role in a club in Birmingham and actually joined Trinity Guild almost during the lockdown period, actually. So a very strange time to join a club. Joined in a more of a club development role to focus on just kind of focusing down on a few coaching commitments. I was probably spread a bit thin last year. So yeah, actually joined the club during lockdown. Just a nice time to think for every club to make changes or kind of look at new projects potentially. So yeah, it was a good time to be starting at a club in that kind of development piece, really. So yeah, it's a strange time during lockdown.
The sort of blank canvas. A bit of a blank canvas. Oh, can you hear me? No.
I completely lost you there, Sean.
I said it's a bit of a blank canvas. No.
No, he's gone again.
He's gone again. Ewan, tell us a little bit about yourself and the roles that you've got with your club, and I know you do some refereeing and you're part of some other groups as well.
Yeah, so I'm based obviously in Gloucester at the moment, doing my degree there. Bit of a weird one. Lockdown came along. We all finished uni early for the year. All went up in the air. Back at uni now, enjoying it again. But yeah, refereeing is just obviously completely died at the moment. So I've actually gone into doing a bit of coaching at the moment. So I've now started out with a new ladies team at a local club, helping them out and trying to keep involved in rugby in one way or another.
That's great. And what club is that you're coaching with?
So I'm coaching at Barton, which is just down the road. It's almost like the little brother or sister of Barton, which is where I'm from originally, and that's my home club. That I started out with them with a young ambassador program back in 2014. Could never really play. It was always a bit rubbish. So I went down the coaching and refereeing route instead.
That's great. We need referees and we need coaches. So
most definitely.
Keep up the great work. And Laurie, captain of the club that I play for, Racal Decca, how are you? How was lockdown? How was lockdown for the club? From your point of view?
So yeah, as pretty much of every club up and down the country, just rugby suddenly stopped sort of towards the tail end of March. It's been a bit, well, I think for many people, well, pretty much everyone, when lockdown first kicked in, it was just a bit, just people didn't know what to do, where the country was going and so on and so forth. But as things started to ease up again, we've also tried to maintain the socialness of the club by having these Zoom calls on a Friday. And then when that sort of petered out, we started getting back into the bit of training towards the middle or start of August. Sort of keeping to the RFU rules, RFU guidelines, the A, B, C, D, E plan, and it's just we're just trying to find our way back into it, as with every other club up and down the country. But main thing for me and for the club is just to maintain that sort of social aspect with day-to-day members, members that play on the weekdays, and people that's there for the social bits as well. Just trying to maintain that socialness has been quite paramount for us as well.
Yeah, big time. Ewan, on the sort of the side of refereeing, you said you're doing some refereeing. Is it a good time to almost, if you're a player or coach and you're looking for something to improve on, is taking a referee's course worth it right now?
Right, this is a golden opportunity. We're very unlikely to ever get this opportunity again, where you can take a break from that physical high-end contact week in, week out, and do some extra learning. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how many players do go away and learn about the new breakdown and what referees are going to be looking for, whether we're going to come back onto the pitch and be blowing 30, 40 penalties like we've seen in the Super Rugby. But there we go. No, I think, look, you can never, if I'm coaching and you win matches based on the amount of penalties you give away, rather than any of the playing aspects of the game. So I think it is, it's a no-brainer really to go, and you don't have to do the full refereeing course, but go and watch some little bits here and there and just educate yourself a bit more.
Definitely. Welcome back, Jordan. Can you hear us?
Yeah, back. So literally Wi-Fi's been flying all day, and
we can't hear him, but
sure.
Has he got mute on?
Better?
No.
Yeah.
Still
I can hear Jordan. I can
hear him.
Oh, I can't.
Yeah, Wi-Fi's been flying all day, and then decides to have a night off.
So I'm not sure if anyone else can hear him. Can anyone else hear Jordan? If Jordan speaks, what about anyone watching? If Jordan speaks, can you hear him?
Try again now. How about
that? I can hear you, Jordan.
Hi, everybody else. Just Sean stitching me up.
I think it's Sean. It sounds like it's just you at the moment, mate.
Must be me. Okay, we'll try and keep going. And if you say something, people might hear it. I just won't.
The other guys will smile and it'll sound like I know what I was talking about.
Someone's gonna have to repeat what he said. Hang on, it's me. Hang on. They can hear you loud and clear. Cheers, Beasley. Right. Okay, I'm coming out of this then. In the meantime, how tough has lockdown been on sort of club finances or player recruitment or anything like that? Talk amongst yourselves, and I'll be trying to get my sound sorted.
I think in terms of player recruitment, it's actually given a lot of opportunity to people. So people they've missed out the social aspect. You can see that down at the club. The amount of people who are coming back, they're socially distancing for a beer or a drink after the games or training or whatever. And you can see that people are enjoying that again. So yeah, that's really good to see. Yeah,
I think we're going to put a ongoing restrictions. I think we're going to have a campaign. Basically, you can't go and see your mates down the pub. You can only see 5 of your mates. I don't even know what the new rules are. I can't keep up with it, but you see 19 of your mates at training. So
there you go.
So we're going to kind of be pushing that kind of just that player retention, especially you can't go out for a few beers with the lads, but come down the club and you can see them all on one training session. So it's an interesting time, isn't it?
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that we can all go rugby training and then can't have that beer, can't socialise. We've all just got to, leave sort of unceremoniously.
Yeah, in regards to training and retention. So we've been hosting our training sessions in a local park, and as a byproduct of that, hoping to sort of catch some stragglers or people just walking or doing their bit of exercise to see as a sort of an advertisement of rugby and see if they actually want to try and join. Don't think we've had too much uptake from potential new players as of it yet, but any advertising you can do during lockdown, any advertising throughout any of the year and exposing the public to rugby, it's always a win-win situation, really.
And we just mentioned that it's a golden opportunity to recruit referees and coaches and stuff like that. Is it a golden opportunity to recruit some new players? players that may not have ever played before, because we're almost starting from scratch, learning the basics, that sort of thing.
I think so, definitely, especially just the odd occasional person that might watch like maybe a Six Nations match or an international match, but never really thought about probably get involved at the club level. As I say, where we do our training is in a local park, so as I say, one of the byproducts of that hopefully would be just to try and catch some interest from someone who may not even want to play, but maybe want to get involved in a club, or maybe wants to get involved doing maybe some coaching if they have some requisite experience, and even refereeing. You never know what you might get just by having it advertised to people, that they can see that there is something actually out there for them. Might not necessarily be playing, but it could be so much more. It's more than just the actual physical aspects of the game. There's so much more to rugby at the grassroots level that people can really get involved with.
So other than it's almost word of mouth. Other than word of mouth, what could clubs be doing to recruit new players that are those types of players that you said that may never have played before, or you want to recruit some volunteers? Like, what can a club do that, especially during a sort of a fallow period where there's no games happening or anything like that? How can a club do that recruitment?
I think rugby is one of those quite niche sports where you either love it or you hate it. And in terms of that physical contact aspect of things, people will be like all over it, or they'll be like, actually, it's not for me. But I think a good opportunity and a good way of recruiting people is to go through the touch rugby route. So you invite them down for a game of touch, and then if they're enjoying it, you bring them onto the physical side of contact, and you then escalate it from there, and you take it as far as they want to take it. I think we've got to be careful that we're not pushing people out of the sport because they don't want to take part in the physical aspect and the physical contact week in, week out. It's part of the reason that I don't play is like, I'll be aching for the next 4 weeks after the game. I don't enjoy this. So I find a different part to do, or part to play in rugby. And we don't need thousands of players week in, week out. What we do need is the backroom staff to manage the teams, the paperwork, the admin, left, right and centre. Because at the moment, we've got a lot of old people doing this. At some point, we're going to need some new generation, some new blood, who are going to take over these more like tedious jobs. But those tedious jobs are the jobs that keep a club running.
100%.
Yeah, 100% agree. Jordan, you said you've joined Trinity Guild to do some club development work. What is that entailing? What can happen in sort of the short, the medium, and the long term?
Yeah, so the club actually is in because the one thing that hasn't been impacted for us really financially is probably the classic land developer buying you out piece at the moment. So we're currently on a temporary site. So yeah, it's been interesting, but we've actually launched a women's team kind of off the back of the lockdown. So that's going quite well. We're actually launching a disability section as well. And it's a strange club in that probably hasn't got a men's 15 regularly playing at the moment, like week in, week out, established in the league. So just in terms of our player retention piece, is for me is to find an alternative. If they don't want to play 15 aside, do we have a sevens piece, and we actually change our season and change the way we look at it? And it's just finding new ways. Our focus generally will be finding just different ways for people to engage in the game. We're not going to get bogged down with how our first team's getting on, which is basically the dominating section of every committee up and down the country. It seems is the first team are going well. Well, according to that, it means the club's going well, and actually the first team might be the only thing going well at the club, and the rest actually needs work. So I think short term for us now is just strengthening the sections we have. Trying to quite exciting to work with this women's team. Stage by stage is actually allowing us to probably get through a lot of technique work and really hone on those skills for some of the new players, rather than trying to rush into games because you can. So that's been quite nice. And then effectively we'll be just trying to strengthen what we do, so that when we do move to our new site in a couple of years, that kind of opening day is packed. And that's kind of the aim for us really, is really make a big showpiece of our new facility when we have it, and have a rugby club that's fit for the quality of facility we're going to have.
So is the new facility in the building at the moment, or in
so land the land is being prepared. I mean, I just go to the rugby side of it, but I think the land is. I don't really know, to be honest. There are plans in place. We can still tweak those plans as well, which is quite exciting. So, if I think there's a total budget for the project, and we can kind of choose to maybe allocate certain bits of that to, whether it be extra lighting instead of 2 extra changing rooms, or I mean that's an exaggeration really, but that kind of thing that we can basically make. I think for us is to go, what do you think the club's going to look like in 2023, 2024, and how can we have a facility where we're not applying for grants? Like, if we've got a chance to build the facility as we want it, we shouldn't be going to we need to speak to the RFU facilities team because we've not got enough lights, that kind of thing. So it's it's been an interesting project. But
so how much has COVID affected the time scale or the money?
I guess for us is the club wasn't necessarily so the sections that the club had in terms of the M&Js regularly and the O2 touch, they're back up and running, not far off where they were. So financially, from that point of view, we're not been impacted. And then from the building perspective, I guess these things never actually are built on time, are they? HS2 is delayed by about 20 years. So I get free rail travel by the time that's built.
Grandad.
Jordan and Ewan, I understand you're both part of the RFU National Youth Council. Is that right?
Yeah, it is indeed. And congratulations to Jordan. He's just been selected to be our chair for the following year. So big up to him.
Fantastic.
Congratulations, mate.
Thank you.
So what does that entail? What does the Youth Council do? It's not something I particularly know a lot about. So just give us a quick rundown.
I try to get some. Effectively, a youth sounding board is kind of the overall kind of piece you would call what the Youth Council do. And over the last kind of 3 or 4 years, I think as the RFU's changed its business model, same the Youth Council's changed its model as well. So if you think back 3 or 4 years of the Young Rugby Ambassadors and all those conferences and those recognition events, Youth Council were very heavily involved in that. And then as that kind of started to change how that ran, we actually became more of a sounding board, and we had different areas of the RFU business asking our opinions, youth insight into social media, commercial, right across the board. Actually, some D&I work as well quite early on, which was pretty interesting. Just looking at kind of how we could kind of attract more non-rugby people to the RFU business, and actually attracting people that are good for those roles, accountants and all that kind of non-rugby specific roles. And we've kind of previously had a kind of weekend meetings, so kind of space out throughout the year. We get together and try and get a lot of our conversations done then, and then go kind of small teams working throughout the year. Very much changed this year by the looks of things. I think with all the cuts, I think the Youth Council was kind of fighting a battle there to even have any budget. So very fortunate to be joined by 6 other people, including Ewan, who are, it's all voluntary anyway, but now, we're not even, there's literally probably going to be no weekend meetings. It'll all be virtual, just us kind of trying to find the way for this year, how we can support the RFU. It's probably going to be a very digital year. It's probably the best way of describing it. So how kind of digital natives that we are as a group can help the RFU in that way, and then hopefully shape, what Youth Council influence looks like for the next 5-10 years off the back of that. So that's the broad plan. What that quite looks like on a month to month for this season is going to be totally different. But yeah, it's kind of what we do, really.
And Ewan, how did you get involved?
So it all started off through the Young Ambassador program back when that was a separate entity. Back in 2014, on the build up to the World Cup, got into my refereeing, stuck with it, got into rugby that way. And then 3rd time lucky, I got into the National Youth Council. So 2 years ago now. And we just carried on escalating the refereeing and the coaching, and then sitting on this as well, which is, great fun. So I now sit on the competitions development subcommittee for the RFU. So we have Zoom meetings and etc., discussing new competition formats and new regulations, etc., that are potentially going to come into the game. So like the new male league structures, I was part of that like decision making almost from that higher level from the council boards, and then there's potentially going to be a female seat like structure review as well, which will also be a part of. And again, then like stuff like the county rugby and things like that. I think there's time for a real shake-up needed there in terms of getting county rugby back up and running in certain counties. Obviously, like there's some that are thriving off it and it works really well, and then there's others it's just virtually non-existent. I think there's a real opportunity now with this natural break that we've been given to create some new structure to the format and how that's going to work effectively.
Is it essentially now it's a blank bit of paper, let's find something completely new that might work?
100%. Like I said earlier, this opportunity, we won't get this opportunity again. We can now, if the right people at the top come in and go, right, we've got this opportunity now, yeah, let's utilise it, then we can go for it. The only negative to that now is obviously the amount of staffing cuts that we've had in the RFU. So those people that would lead these changes, they're under job roles and etc. are all swapping and changing as well. So I think patience is what we've got to have here. Like change will happen and there will be hopefully change for the better in the long run. But it's going to take a little bit of time whilst people get used to the new surroundings that they're in.
Oh yeah, definitely, 100%.
It's a challenge at that review. Just that point, it is a challenge though because there's a lot of talk around. People don't want to play as often, but just from my experience of a men's team coaching for the last 2 years, like our guys wanted to play every week pretty much, or like we had 2 men's teams. If the first team didn't have a game because there was no league or cup game, and we felt probably played quite a few in a row here, we'll give the guys a kind of a week off. We're getting badgered to put a game on. So I think it must be so difficult from that point of view to try and not going to please everybody here, are we? That's going to be such a challenge that so it's even like these COVID restrictions, like can't please everyone.
I think a lot of the review and the review process that happened with the male league structure format, it wasn't so much people weren't wanting to play every week. It was the travel that was done with that. So if you're like traveling, the ladies, so the Championship North goes from Cheltenham right up to Newcastle upon Tyne. So people are traveling 6 hours each way just for a game of rugby. And much as though they want that game of rugby, there's very limited people that have that capacity to be able to travel those distances week in, week out. And that's that's where the review process has got to come in and correct things so that doesn't happen.
No, for sure. Laurie, what's your feelings on localized leagues rather than the distances that we have to travel?
To be honest, I think at sort of our level with Racal Decca that we play at, I don't think we necessarily need to travel too far. I think the furthest game we used to have at least was Farnham, which did pose problems because obviously you had to sort of arrange cars. But I think pretty much most of the games that I've played in the last couple of years would have been within a, let's say, about 8 mile radius. Nothing that would break the bank. Nothing in comparison to what Ewan's saying about the women's game. Nowhere near that. But I think having games more local, having this league structure that is more local is always beneficial. Just builds on sort of links and bonds between clubs that are obviously local to you. So like for example as well, where Racal Decca is a one team side. So if ever we don't have any games on, and say like one of our oppositions or clubs close to us may be struggling to put out a game, having those bonds built up because we played each other recently or locally, we can also help fulfill some of their fixtures as well. I don't think that would necessarily apply if you'd have to travel in excess of like 10-20 miles away. So yeah, having local leagues and having a local structure is definitely beneficial and positive.
Definitely, and it's probably a good time to just pause there because I'm actually contractually obliged to let you know that there is across the banner or the ticker at the bottom, there is a promo code for Rugby Store. They've very kindly decided to sponsor these rugby roundtables now. So go and get 10% off anything. Use the promo code FYB Pod at the checkout, and you can get 10% off of the New England kit or a new pair of boots, new pair of shorts, or whatever you need. That's my contractually obliged plug for this roundtable. So moving on. We spoke about this, we sort of touched on it a bit earlier, but how have players or coaches or referees been able to better themselves during the break? Jordan, how do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I guess just firstly is the rest, like actually being able to pause without that kind of like, I guess traditionally you'd pause in the off season, but you'd always be thinking about the next season. Whereas like for a bit, there's actually a bit of a time where it's pausing. It was almost pointless to think about anything other than just, yourself and just kind of making sure, like prioritizing yourself. So me personally, did a lot of reading, whether it be coaches' books or sports psychology books, leadership, culture, whatever it was quite a broad thing, kind of a list I'd probably brought up of, you're in these conversations and someone said, oh, read this, and you just never have time to do it. So there was that, just a lot of time for reflection, really, probably. And I'd say whether that's as a player, coach, or ref, just, the last kind of 6 months, that kind of lockdown period, you're not able to go and do it and kind of think about the things that you miss, the things that you really start to think about, did I do things as well as I could have done if I had another chance to do some of that stuff? How would I, there was I think back to a couple of games I coached last year and stick in my head is like, if I had that chance to do it again, how would I manage that game week? How would I manage that selection or all that kind of stuff? And effectively, that's all we can really do to learn for the future is kind of, as much as we can read new content, is just reflect on the stuff that we have done. But I think by building up that experience and kind of going, I would have done that differently, then next time that situation comes around, you'd like to think you'd deal with it better. Whether you deal with it right or not is then another conversation, but you definitely feel like you'd deal with it better in your own mind. So that for me has made me feel better. I feel massively re-energized anyway, going back into coaching, like just buzzing to get back. Like just so buzzing to get back, and hopefully that energy has been infectious to the players I've been coaching, and the numbers we've seen in training have been quite good. So, I'm going to hope that that's probably as a result of that kind of time off and that learning and kind of refresh period, really.
No, for sure. Larry, how do you think? Do you think you're going to be a better player for having a bit of a rest? And
one would like to think so. The impromptu end to our season, I think for the first month or maybe 6 weeks, even myself and maybe quite a lot of players were quite relieved just to give their bodies a bit of a rest. I know it's quite cliche with rugby, but people do tend to play games and carry injuries whilst they're playing games. So that sort of 6 week break where there was no rugby being played, I think me, myself, and I think some of the players as well were just happy to sort of let their bodies repair, re-energize and get ready. And then I've definitely noticed over the last couple of months as well that people are really chomping at the bit to really get back into rugby, get back into playing, get back into training. Our training numbers have gone up as well. I was speaking to one of the fellas from Mitchell McCall Sholton. He says each week they're getting training sessions of having up to like maybe 20 to 30, 40 people turn up, and people are really, really eager to get that get back into rugby, which is definitely a great thing to see. And the overall aim or objections is that, you do come back a better player, come back refreshed as well. The body's refreshed, mentally you're refreshed. And I think with not just rugby, with all sports, especially sports where you play in a team, it gives you something different to do to break up your routine, your daily routine, be it family life or work life. Having that, being able to play with your friends on a Saturday, coach your friends on a Saturday, or referee your friends on a Saturday, it just gives that sort of split from your day-to-day life, and it provides you something different to do. And I think that's something that I certainly something that I am certainly looking forward to getting back to. And I know quite a lot of my friends teammates are looking forward to get back into. I'll stop there now.
It turns out Woody is looking forward to your team talk again. But just on that Mitchell and Carl Shorten point as well, we've had a point from is it going to pop up on the screen? Aaron Beasley saying that down at Portsmouth, 45 plus every week, every Tuesday. New players coming in, big push on fitness and getting out there exercising. I couldn't think of anything worse than fitness, to be honest. But it's great for them. And if they've got 45 people to train in, and they can, they're turning up to fitness training as well. That's pretty good going.
Yeah, I'll definitely concur with that. Training numbers. Yeah, what I've seen and what people of other clubs have told me, that they are going up, and people are really, really missing it, or missing rugby itself. So, yeah, it can only be a good thing if you've got participation numbers going up in the off season, then it gives you a better chance of fulfilling games and having fun in games when the season does hopefully return.
So, on sort of the opposite of that, then, if today or tomorrow we get a message from the RFU saying we're going back down to stage B, do you think playing numbers and training numbers are going to drop off?
I'd like to not hope so, but based on those guidelines, I think, well, possibly, yeah. That is the fact of reality, possibly. I think I can't remember what B is. Is it groups of six?
B's the pods of 6.
Yes. You'd like to not say, you'd like to hope not, but it is a possibility. Yeah.
I think with more established teams, certainly you might then see the numbers dropping off. But in terms of those new founding teams and your younger players, actually being at phase B is a really good opportunity to just work in those individual skills, in small groups. If you put like new teams with 20, 30 people straight into one big environment, then you quite easily run the risk of people getting lost, people getting left behind, etc. So I think actually having those smaller groups to start with can actually be quite beneficial to some clubs. So
to be fair, I think whatever happens, I think the clubs, where you've got new team or old team, I think the crucial bit, whatever the guidance is communicating out to your players and just having a clear plan of what's going on. So much uncertainty at the moment, like that. If you can say, look, even if we go back to stage B, as like for most players, especially players that have played a while, I think it was a relief to get to kind of where we are now, and the training looks a little bit more normal, as you say. But I think from my point of view, is kind of, if we went back to, and we didn't train in stage B now, but if that was, say, a bit of a worst case, really, isn't it? But if we go back to stage B, it's kind of like, how do we communicate to the players, manage expectations, maintain those friendship groups as well. But how clear can we communicate as a club about all that? That's kind of our main plan of action for everything, really, is just be really clear on all communication, fair across the club, and really shout about how safe we are as an activity because of the guidelines we're following.
Yeah, definitely. And I think stage B is going to be a worst case scenario, isn't it? Realistically, 100%. It means it's going to drop down to C if it drops at all. If you look
at Northern Ireland now and Scotland, they're actually back to playing competitive rugby.
So are they really?
They're back to full contact competitive rugby, and I've read some of their guidelines because we've had a lad who's come across from Northern Ireland to the scholarship that I'm on at uni, and read those guidelines, and it is very much in the RFU's interest to obviously get rugby back up and running. And I personally think that it could now be, we're waiting on government approval to move on to the next stage as opposed to anything else. I think the infrastructure and the guidelines that we need to put forward are there, and the process has been completed, but it's now getting a Department for Culture, Media and Sport to come through and go, yep, we're going to give you the green light. And when we get that green light, is now being potentially thrown back up into the air. There was some talks a couple of weeks back that we were maybe looking at a November restart for phase F, but with these new guidelines, it's gone back up in the air, unfortunately. But there we go. What can we do? At the end of the day, it's all out of our hands. We've just got to follow the rules, get on with it. There's not a lot we can do.
Yeah, exactly. So finally, before we jump into a couple of points, I know Ewan's got to jump off very shortly. But what happens if, let's say, rugby doesn't come back for the rest of this season? Are we going to start to see clubs falling by the wayside? We know that Premiership clubs are sort of teetering on the brink at the moment, whether you read into that or not. but do you think our grassroots or amateur clubs on the verge?
I think those that run efficiently and effectively shouldn't be in any danger. Your outgoings now are going to be rather minimal in terms of at that grassroots level. So I can't really see why there's that major push on it. If they've applied for the appropriate grants when they've come out available, etc., and are doing separate sponsorship and fundraising events, which a lot of rugby clubs are doing and are being well received by members of the public and members of that rugby club, then at a grassroots level, I don't think we've got a lot to worry about. We're really fortunate of how much of a community rugby is and how willing people are to, right, well, I'm not having a pint this week, so I'll donate a £5 instead of having a pint, etc., to the rugby club. And I've seen that lots of different local rugby clubs to me across the board are raising thousands upon thousands of pounds to keep ticking over. So I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, I think the only issue comes about with the loss of rugby clubs is potentially if any rugby clubs have a certain fixed cost per month that they must fulfill, and the way they usually pay that is via sort of food, drinks, and entertainment. Those are the clubs that could potentially be in trouble. So any club that maybe has to have a fixed contract with to rent their ground, to rent the clubhouse, they are the ones that would be most likely to be adversely affected if rugby doesn't return. But so with us, like Racal Decca, we don't have particularly any fixed costs that we need to pay on a month-by-month basis. We rent out our pitches and we rent the changing facilities. If we don't use it, we don't pay for it. So the only clubs that need to be worried, I would say, is any one club that has a fixed term contract where they have to pay X amount per month, and those are the ones that I think may be susceptible to unfolding.
Yeah, I think so. I think grassroots clubs should be okay. Yeah, as Ewan said, if they're managed properly, then I think they should be fine. It might be a little bit of scaremongering from Premiership clubs, and for those guys, I know they've got wages to pay and stuff like that. So and grassroots clubs don't necessarily have that really. Cool. There's just a couple of points from Darren, one here from Darren, and it goes back on the point we made about the women's clubs, one being based in Cheltenham and one being based in, you're playing a club in Newcastle. And he says, the issues with the grassroots game is that the structure is in its infancy, meaning there are fewer clubs at the moment. So you can understand why a club from Cheltenham might be playing a club in Newcastle, and hopefully as the game grows, you'd expect that to sort of be even more regionalised. Do you think?
Yeah, it's a chicken and egg, isn't it? Like, it's just a massive chicken and egg for the women's game. Like, and even for the men, even the same as the men's game is like it's localized. Like, imagine in some areas you could have, like Larry said, he didn't go out pretty much an 8 mile radius. Like, I think all of our games are outside of an 8 mile radius. That's the, so, and they were the local ones. So it's that kind of, if you haven't got the clubs locally, can you play? I think what I do think can be improved though, and I think especially in the women's game, I think Lou Latta was really good at this, and some of the women's networks I think she communicates very well about the challenges that we're facing and what's happening. I know there was some frustration around a lack of communication, probably made worse by the furlough, to be honest, and staff not being able to communicate. But I think, especially the state we're in now, as nationwide, not just as a sport, I think if we communicate with each other a little bit better about the problems we're facing, and then people don't want to be understanding about those problems, then I think they're the problem. At the end of the day, problems. No one wants the let's say Cheltenham ladies to be playing up in Newcastle. Nobody wants that. And I think if anyone thinks that that's the case, it's putting a bit of a reality check. So it's that communication piece is so important, that if you don't talk to anyone, you don't explain things, people think it's not on your agenda, it's not on your radar. Whereas, if you're saying, look, we are aware that this travel is ridiculous, we are doing something to fix it, or we hope we have a solution. What do you think about this? And I think, starts to help those challenges really.
Definitely. Another point come from Robert again. Are Saracens in the best position as they are used to low attendances? Is that right? Or are they going to be hit hard? Well, at the moment, I don't think they've got a league to play in at the moment. If the sort of the things that came out the other day where the championship clubs have had their money gone from 1.2 million to 640 grand, now down to 40 grand. I don't necessarily think they're going to be playing any rugby next year. So,
is that a fact as well now? Because I did read something about that a couple of days ago. I wasn't sure.
So. I don't know.
I think there's more to it than the attendances though. Like there's such a the complex businesses.
Sponsor, so they're going to struggle as it is anyway.
But even clubs with existing sponsors, like there's so much like tied to attendances, and like say if you're selling advertising on a really big screen, it'll be based on the fact that so many thousand people will be seeing that every week, and you barely see the big screen at a game on BT. So there's a challenge there. So I think all clubs are facing it. I think Saracens might be in a good place though if they can get those games abroad on, and potentially places where go over there a couple of weeks quarantine. I think they play the Stormers, something like that. Go and play some other clubs. Saracens might actually be in the best position, not for the low attendances, but if the championship season's delayed, all this other stuff, they could probably find other ways to get commercial activity off the ground. Whereas other clubs are going to be tied back into the Premiership season and just trying to fight for relegation will be a thing next year. So they'll be be tough.
Yeah, I think so. We're going to call it a night there. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you all for your comments. Thank you to Laurie, Jordan, and Ewan for joining us. You can check this out again if you want to watch it again. It's going to be on YouTube a bit later, and there's going to be a podcast on Friday morning. So check out all our social channels, and there'll be links to all of it, all of there tomorrow. So yeah, just want to thank you again, Laurie, Jordan, Ewan. Thank you for joining me. Let's do it again one day. Let's check in and see how your clubs are getting on and how you're getting on once we're getting a bit closer to some actual rugby.
Amazing. Cheers, guys.
Great. Cheers, guys. Cheers, chaps.
Cheers, everybody. Cheers.